David, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm
Been a
excited to have
big
you
fan of
on.
your channel and watched a lot of your content, so it's kind of awkward being on this side of the camera.
It's fun having you on, and what I love is bringing on people that have credible backgrounds that are doing things other than life insurance to talk about your experience because you're an attorney. You are doing quite well just from a standpoint of your business. You're just how people have worked with you, and you have a big brand. You're doing lots of great things. We've had the pleasure of actually working with you and helping you through this. And one of the comments that we get is we're saying that the only people that like life insurance are the people that are actually selling it. Now, I I think there's some truth to that comment because there is a lot of people that we bring on. It's a lot easier to obviously talk about something if you're in it. But one of the things that I've made a commitment to is I want to bring on people that and hear their perspective that aren't in the insurance space but have seen value and end up, incorporating insurance in their life. And I know that you're actually doing some advanced things as well. And so, whether we get into that or not, I wanted to bring you on, get a little bit of your backstory, but then talk a little bit about your aha moments and how you're incorporating and integrating life insurance into your personal life and into your business life. So, before we get into your background, I would love to hear like your aha moment to where you were like, I actually might overfund and put money into permanent life insurance.
Absolutely. First of all, again, thanks for having me. And the aha moment for me is very clear in my mind. It was about 4 years ago, and I wished it had been a long time before that because I've had life insurance my entire adult life, uh, but I was not aware of the the opportunity to overfund life insurance and build up cash value until about 4 years ago. I was listening to a podcast, oddly enough, a legal podcast, and the guest talked about Walt Disney using life insurance to fund part of his venture in Orlando, and then also a couple of other well-known people that had used life insurance as a bank, and I had no clue what he was talking about. Um, so I asked a few questions of people, and someone shared the um, Nelson Nash book with me, the infinite banking concept, and it was maybe this thick. And so I read it, and I was blown away. And so I read it again to make sure that what I read was accurate, and it was. And spent a couple of days studying the spreadsheets and the models that he ran in that simple book, and that was the aha moment for me. From that time on, I was very, very interested in the whole life, high cash value life concept.
Well, you say simple book because I think it's less than 100 pages. It's very
Certainly,
easy to read,
70, 80 pages. There's not much to it.
but it's challenging. I know I've had to read it a couple times, and when I first got into space, I also read that book, and I looked at it from a little, like, too analytical. Like, I actually was, like, looking at the numbers, and the more I learned, it was like the numbers didn't necessarily represent the philosophy, but let me rephrase that. The numbers represented the philosophy, but when it comes to like the actual accounting and how they work, they like Nelson tried to oversimplify it, and as a result, it like tripped me up. And so I when I first read the book, I read it from like an analytical brain, and when I took a step back and said, no, I just want to get the concept, it was life changing. And there's probably like ten takeaways from that book. Is there any one or two like lessons or like when you read it, it resonated to where like, oh, it's like, why didn't I know this my entire life?
The biggest one that I've preached this to my children since I have 5 children, all adults and all capable of buying life insurance. And I've told them, the earlier you start, the the more opportunity that you have. And that the biggest takeaway for me is just the value of building a cash value in a life insurance policy and having access to it for your entire life, and still having a significant um, benefit for your heirs when you leave this life. And it blew me away. What was so I thought so unique and so interesting about the book is he went through examples of comparing the life insurance policy cash value concept to buying a CD or taking out a bank loan or just traditional banking. And in every instance, uh, at least from my perspective, the life policy was a better opportunity and provided more opportunities. And so that to me was, the one thing that just it really did blow me away. And I spent hours and hours. That's how I found your content, trying to learn more about it. And then I learned about a bunch of other things. And I watched, I think his name is the guy with Truth Concepts, Todd,
Yep.
that you ever the
Todd,
show, where he just runs these models. And I find it very, very interesting. It's probably a pretty boring topic for most people, but it's very interesting to me. And it hasn't disappointed me thus far.
when I first got into the space, I was obsessed with the cash value growth and then being able to borrow against it. Those are the two things that I really cared about. And ironically, if those are the only two things that you care about, life insurance is not as valuable as you think it is because over time it's going to grow anywhere from 3.5 to maybe 5.5 internally. And then, borrowing, will there be arbitrage? Probably not. So, like from that standpoint, if the only thing you care about is growth and being able to borrow, you could make an argument, tax benefit, beneficial growth, and all. Like you could still make the argument that it's more beneficial to do that. But then the more I've learned, the more I've had conversations, the getting married, having a kid. Like when I first got in this business, wasn't even dating, and so like my perspective has changed, just even being a dad. And you're totally right. Like now having having that economic protection of my future value creating, like just like protecting and the legacy aspect cemented and giving me the ability to increase my pool of capital and giving me things like chronic and terminal illness riders, which are really, really hard to put into a calculator, and giving me creditor protections and like all those things. When you start realizing that, I'm like, okay, I'm really am building a foundation for my family and yet it's the pool of capital is not the end result. It's what you can do with that pool of capital over the next 30 years. I mean, that's another thing that I think people are so short-minded. It's like, what am I going to do, in the next 6 months? And sometimes I'm like,
Yeah.
I think we underestimate what can happen over the next 30 years. I think we're maybe too hard on ourselves short term, but over 30 years, that's a long time. And so I'm just mentioning that because you already came to that conclusion because of you're older than I am. You have a family. You're successful in your career. When I first got in, I just literally saw growth, use, and that was attractive. And then the more I realize, I'm like, man, like, yeah, these are still attractive, but there's so much more. And it's increased my love for this product, but it's also made me less hypey. And I don't know if you can relate to that, but it's like I'm a bigger believer, and yet I have no desire to try to like pitch or sell this or convince it to someone who doesn't get it.
Well, I am a bigger believer, but I do try to pitch it and sell it and primarily to my kids
All
because
right, send your kids this video, and hey, if you're watching this, we'll take care of you. We'll answer any questions.
and one of my children is he graduated in finance and he's very analytical and he spent weeks trying to pick it apart. He read the book and he came to the same conclusion that I did, and he did buy I don't know if you call it an overfunded policy, but just a policy that he could dump cash into. And
Cool.
that was 3 years ago. And I think I had a conversation with him a week or so ago. He told me he's used the cash value twice, paid it back, and said it's one of the best things he's done.
When you were studying, what were some of the critics and cons that you were trying to get behind, I mean, maybe there was none, but obviously when people are googling things and reading different things, like there's lots of people out there that hate permanent life insurance. So what were some of the things that you had to get over when it was just deciding like I'm gonna put a significant chunk of money into this thing? I want to make sure that it's not a scam or a ripoff.
Yeah, I think the biggest is, and I know that you hear it all the time, is that why don't I just put my money in equities or in the market and I'll outperform life insurance. And again, referring to the book and illustrations that I've seen on your channel with Truth Concepts, it you may beat life insurance with the market, but the overall compounding benefits of life insurance. I don't mean compounding interest. That's one of the benefits, but just having the permanency of it, having creditor protection, having guaranteed growth, having guaranteed access to the cash, to me outweighs any potential upside that you may get in a market play from time to time. And so, not that there's not a place to put some money in the market, but if I was speaking to my younger self today, I would say any dollar that I have that I could play with, I would put in life insurance first and then go find an opportunity with that same money later on.
Yep. The concept of cash value versus cash is very interesting because cash value has a legacy and insurance protection tied to it. And so the idea of $500,000 in cash value versus $500,000 in a high yield savings account is just totally different. And yet most people would look at this the same. I'm actually going to share this with you. I have not shared this publicly other than like a recent episode that has not released yet. We're going through like 20 some examples of how crazy ways that life insurance could be used. And I know that you're not a divorce attorney, but you might find this interesting. When I first got into the space, I set up a life insurance policy for somebody, and it wasn't as overfunded as we do now, but it was still overfunded, but it was early. And even if you overfund it early, you have less cash value in the first couple of years. And they were sadly going through a divorce. And when they were splitting up assets, they didn't really know how to value the insurance policy. And they purely went off of the cash value. And they almost even got a better deal because they saw the cash value, but then they saw that you quote unquote had to pay going forward, and they saw that as a
Oh,
disadvantage, a liability. And so it's just interesting. I was scared to death, being young and like, even having like these divorce attorneys like wanting to quote me and stuff. Is like I was like a little bit worried. But overall, this person, the asset itself got crazy undervalued and got to keep the asset. And overall, it was in hindsight, like they actually wanted to make sure that this person didn't set up insurance to just spite their what like so it was interesting to see like the exam because the way that it looked is like, oh, you're putting money into here. You know how some people like sell their home for less than it's worth just to like get back, like, and that wasn't the
right.
case at all. And that is, but it was interesting to me that this asset um was wasn't even that, like, it's just misunderstood across the board. And I think there can be some advantages to that, but there also can be disadvantages. And the biggest disadvantage is we call it the eraser at the door, where people get life insurance and then they go like, why do I have this again? And that's just a signal to us that we need to do a better job when it comes to talking about how this strategy makes your life better. Because we could talk about something having 20 jobs, but if those 20 jobs don't actually make you, David, your life, your business better for having it, then it doesn't matter if we give you 200 jobs. We need to focus more on, does this thing better your outcomes, give you like increase betterment in when it comes to your outlook. And so my next question to you is, when it comes to your personal and business integration, and you can share whatever you want. I know you have a very unique situation just being an attorney, and you get compensated in ways that not everyone does. I think that's a fair statement to be made. Um, I want to just give you the floor to talk about how insurance how you are integrated it into your personal life, but then how you're actually thinking about integrating it into your business. And would love to hear in your own words how those things are making other things better, just by having life insurance.
Sure. It in my personal life, I've had a form of life insurance from, within a year of graduating from law school, and that's 30 plus years ago. A dear friend of mine at the time was a life insurance agent, sold me a universal life policy that I still have today. That is getting more and more expensive every year, which is crazy. That's After that, I bought a bunch of, or at the time it was a bunch of traditional pure whole life insurance and a couple of term policies, and I still have pretty much all of those today, and I've funded them, for 20 plus years, and they've accumulated a decent cash value that I've used from time to time over the last 20 years, but very sparingly. Um, and then when I learned about this product, like I said, I just kind of became obsessed with it for a while and started inquiring, and then overfunded a couple of large policies, and have not really. Well, actually, I have. I've just recently used one of them to. I also own a lot of commercial real estate, and so one of my commercial real estate uh, properties had a loan on it, and the loan was a variable rate that was increasing, or with the rising interest rates a couple of years ago. I was going to have to pay a couple of extra points of interest. And so I just said, I'm not going to do that. I'll just use my life insurance policy, pay it off. And now I'm just paying myself back. And so in that sense, it was just making a phone call, having money wired to my account, paying off the loan, and it was seamless, totally seamless.
My next question to ask you is around this concept of retirement, and Nelson would be rolling in his grave if he heard that word come out of my mouth because he's not a fan. I'm not a fan. There's the Bible doesn't talk about retiring, and so I think that's very clear. So I usually change the word retirement to just future cash flow,
Hmm.
the future, and creating just an ability to not having to work, but still being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. Um, you've talked a lot about the banking aspect and even have used and your son has used the policies for things. That's awesome. When you were looking at life insurance, did the future like retirement aspect come into play? Did you care anything about that? Talk to me about that, because one thing that I'm also trying to do is I'm trying to marry the, hey, you can get the benefits of utilizing your capital while you're alive and accumulating, but then this asset can show up pretty powerfully. It can be a super bond. It can unlock other strategies that aren't necessarily available, and you get a legacy aspect. And so I'm trying to like, and I haven't done a great job, but I'm try to combine those three concepts and not and getting the point that you don't have to choose. You might care more about one or the other. Like right now it's clear to me that you care more about control as an entrepreneur, but that doesn't mean that you still shouldn't care about how the options that are available for you in the future with life insurance. So talk to me about, in your research, did you care anything about that? And is there anything that hit you as you are like digging into this?
Yeah, it absolutely is a large component of my motivation for buying life insurance. Um, Again, speaking to my children, everyone is touting the need and the importance of funding a 401k or whatever retirement vehicle they're working on under. And my advice to them is whatever portion of that your employer matches, take advantage of it, or whatever portion somebody else matches, take advantage of it. If it were me personally, I would take the difference and put it in life insurance, for the very reasons that you just described. Because at some point in time, um, if if and when you retire, the the dividends that are being paid year to year, the ability to borrow against the cash value and not have to pay that money back necessarily, or just to pay it back as you wish, to me far outweighs any 401k, and the ability to have access to it for emergencies throughout your entire life, and not having to wait until you're 59 and a half or 62 or 65, whichever the case may be. To me, the life insurance product offers a great retirement opportunity and a great stream of guaranteed income for someone who is thinking about retirement or needs supplemental income at some point in their life. And so, yes, it's a very big consideration for me.
We've helped people unlock millions of dollars in hidden value just by reviewing their old life insurance policies. Unfortunately, thousands of people do not have life insurance policies set up properly, which could be costing them a lot of money. If you have a policy, the few minutes it takes to fill out our form could be the difference between continuing to waste money or unlocking serious value. If you qualify, we'll review your policy 100% for free and give you the honest breakdown you deserve. Click the link in the description or take comment below to apply. Back to the video. Yeah, that's all. That's awesome. Is there anything else that you want to mention as it relates to life insurance? I do have other questions when it comes to like how you vet real estate deals, your framework on wealth, and some other things that you tell your younger self. But before we get to that, is there anything else that you want to mention when it comes to the life insurance topic that wasn't mentioned in this conversation?
Not really. I just wish that I had learned a lot more, a lot sooner in my life. But you know, the
Yeah.
best time to plant a tree was yesterday. I'm going to plant it today, and so that's where we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, I think the quotes, "The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time to plant a tree is today." And I feel that way, and I learned about this at 18 years old. So
I was, I
if
was
I had a
20 years.
dollar for every time someone told me that, I
I was 56 when I learned about it, so I wish that.
that's crazy. Wow. I yeah, it's I have another thing to just run by you. What would you so let's say your kids get their human life value all done. Like they knock that out. So
Mhm.
they can get $7 million of life insurance. Let's just say they get all 7 million, and they want to put more money into life insurance. Would you be opposed to having them buy life insurance on your life, assuming that you could get more life insurance, and them controlling the capital on your life? And then when you pass away, the death benefit goes to them. What is your initial thought and take? Because that's a thing. That's something that um, I know some people personally doing. And I'm just curious what your take would be if they approached you saying that they wanted to do that.
I've never considered it. I would not be opposed to it, knowing what I know
Okay.
about life insurance.
As
I
long as
think
there's no incentive
it can be
to
pretty
take out
expensive at
dad
this point.
before he needs to be taken out.
If
That
they have spouses and some of them have children, I think that would be a better opportunity for them
yeah,
to fund those policies instead of one on me or my
agreed.
spouse.
Agreed. Yeah, I think the Rockefeller waterfall concept is we want to maximize life insurance and then maximize it on each generation. And I do agree with that. And it's just an interesting thought experiment. Some people are totally against it because of just the idea of having something in place that creates uh, a a payout upon death
Mhm.
is problematic, and it's so I get that, and I also it's a great first world problem to think through. Uh,
And look, early on when I started having children, the idea of buying life insurance on my children was pitched to me, and I thought it was repulsive at the time. Why do I take a life policy on my child? I don't need any money from my child. Knowing what I know now, I wished I had done it.
yeah,
Not for the death benefit, but for the cash value.
yep, yeah,
What a
the
wonderful gift to give to a child at some point in time
s
to
s yeah. So
get to.
sometime I'll actually show what my daughter has, and it's amazing when you give 80 years of compounding. It's insane. But then when you start looking at, there's benefits to 529 plans and other things. So don't get me wrong, but the optionality that you have, knowing that I don't even know if college is really going to be around 20 years from now. It's at least going to look different, and the idea of like we can put something in place that hopefully could be a blessing and benefit our kids as they're maybe starting businesses, buying cars, buying homes, potentially helping them supplement future stuff. I hate the word retirement, but you get the point. But then the decision that I made when my daughter was born is ultimately going to have an impact on her kids if she has kids or future grandchildren potentially. That idea, I don't know if there's any financial decision that you could almost guarantee that being set up, and you can guarantee that being the case if especially if you do proper trust planning, which is very interesting. It's an interesting idea. And I think we need to do more talk. We actually do a lot of kids policies. I think for that reason, I think we attract many people that once they learn about it, they're like, the greatest gift that I can do is get this established. So I'm very glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's. I don't think there's any doubt that it's a wonderful gift to give to a child or to a grandchild.
What I want to pivot to now is, you've been very successful just in your career. Always curious about different career advice, books that you've read, the any mentors or anything that if I were to sit across the table from you and say like in the last 30 years of being in business, what have been like the top things that you've lived by that have helped you be successful? How would you answer that question?
Wow, it's a big question. I throughout my career, I started out of law school and opened my own practice, which is somewhat unusual. And so I never worked for an organization. My degree was not business related, and then I went to law school. And so the trials of learning how to run a business as a sole practitioner, and then once I started succeeding in hiring employees, um, that was tough. Everything from managing finances to managing people to hiring and firing people um, have been a learning process for the last 30 plus years. I would say in the last 12 to 15 years, um, myself and my law partner and the people that work for us really became focused on running a business. Traditionally law firms, people think of them as a law firm. You're practicing law and not running a business, but it's really just a business like any other. And so putting processes in place and making them repeatable and making them measurable using data. Um, we are so data driven in our law practice right now. It blows me away. Sometimes I look at the data that we track, everything from um, how long a phone call lasts, how long it takes for a client to call us when they see an ad on TV or wherever else they may see it. How long does it take us to handle a case? You know, what does that case generate in terms of revenue for the client and for the business? All of those metrics were totally foreign to me 12 to 15 years ago. And now I can't go a day without looking at them and making decisions based on that data and those metrics. And so that would be the biggest transformation rather than just putting out fires every day.
Yeah.
We have a much more defined and predictable business model. And you know, we've gotten to the point where we can predict revenue to within 1% annually, which is blows my mind. But we've become very, very good at predicting revenue and expenses, and so our budgeting has become much easier and
Wow.
much more accurate. And so
Wow.
learning how to run a business and learning going through the tediousness of tracking data and collecting it and doing something meaningful with it has been the biggest transformation of any. And I would advise anyone who's starting any business, and I think it applies to all businesses, to be very cognizant of your data and trust it. Don't go on emotion, don't go on instinct, and don't go on, you know, what your gut tells you. The data seldom lies to you.
What was there any books or trainings or people that you learned from, or is it just the years of making mistakes?
Yeah. No, not any one book in particular, more participating in mastermind groups with other, in my case, law firms that were, you know, light years ahead of where I was. That's another piece of advice. I would surround myself with people who are much more successful than you are, because that's the way you truly learn. And you'll find that almost everyone wants to share everything that they've learned. Um, they don't view you as a competitor. They don't view you as a threat, and they want to help you. And so interacting with mastermind groups and other much more successful lawyers and law firms, right, who have been running their businesses as businesses, was transformational for us.
Yeah, I love that. Moving on to investing, when it comes to just you said that you have some real estate and all. Were you the one of millions of people that read Rich Dad Poor Dad and were like, I'm going to start buying real estate? Or was there another epiphany that you had that were like, hey, I want to get into this? Talk to me
I
about
did read
your
the book, but
framework.
years and years after I bought real estate or started investing in real estate. Real estate's just always fascinated me, and I've always it's always been an interest of mine. And so as I had access to capital and and to credit, I started buying commercial real estate at a relatively young age, probably in my late 20s. And it's something that I've become much more knowledgeable about. I know how to analyze a piece of real estate and you know, determine the rate of return on it, determine whether it's going to increase in value, and then the obvious, which I didn't know originally, the obvious benefits of depreciation and other aspects that come with real estate that I had no knowledge about. So it's been something that I've enjoyed investing in. Um, this morning I was looking at a real estate deal. Uh, Equities have never been very good to me, only because I would buy and sell on emotion and typically lose money. And so I've shied away from investing in the markets. Not that people don't have great success in the markets.
Right.
I don't care for them.
When real estate's set up well, it grows, it can create cash flow, you can use leverage to acquire the asset, whereas not all assets will just let you use the favorable terms of leverage. I think that gets underlooked when people are looking at like investment opportunities. And then also it has amazing tax benefits. And
Yeah.
so and then it has step up in basis. So the aspect of it, those are like five really solid factors. And it's interesting. There's a lot of people that like real estate that also like life insurance because I think they see patterns and they're different assets. One's an investment, one's not. One is more valuable when it comes to cash flow and other things, and one's more stable and protective. But they work really well together, And it's interesting. It's just interesting that if you polled a lot of our clients, a lot of them have some type of either real estate background or are they lean towards the real estate asset for the things that they want to invest in. And it's an observation that's not just true to our company, but others out there that are pro life insurance tend to like the real
Yeah,
estate.
it's an asset and an investment that just makes sense to me. But if you're buying solid real estate in in the right location and you're not overpaying for it, I don't see how
Yeah.
you're risking a whole lot.
Yeah, especially if you're willing to play the long game. And I think sometimes it's a lot
Mhm.
easier to play the long game when something that you can feel, touch, it actually exists. Where sometimes when you're holding equities and all, it's like, yeah, you technically own a very, 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 very small piece of a company, and sometimes it doesn't feel real, for being honest. But so I think it's that's an aspect, and that's cool. That I appreciate you sharing that.
That's
Curious
the other thing
outside.
I've learned to I like control of my investments and equities. I have zero control. It's a matter of checking my phone 20 times a day to see what the stock market is doing. It just drives me crazy. And so having total control of my investments, whether it's real estate or even life insurance, is very secure for me. I've even looked at some syndication deals in real estate. I kind of shy away from those as well, just because of the lack of control.
Yeah. Is there any other money like principles that you've lived by that might not have anything to do with insurance, but that have just treated you, your business, your family well?
Don't go for shiny and flashy objects. Uh, uh, the reward is very short lived, and the regret is forever sometimes. And I've made those mistakes. You see something that you wanted or you think that you want, and you go and spend a bunch of money on a boat or whatever it might be, and you realize 6 8 months later that wasn't the best choice. And so
Yep.
um, temper those temptations as best as you can, and just do what is safe. And not that you shouldn't reward yourself from time to
Yep.
time with something for your efforts, but make that the last of your choices.
Agreed. I love that. Um, I'm gonna end with a an OG question.
Okay.
This is the question that I used to end my original podcast even before we were on YouTube, and it's called the legacy question. And the legacy question goes like this: if this is your last day on Earth and you're with your family and the people that you love the most, and you can't give them anything, you can't give them this podcast, you can't give them any books, you can't give them anything other than a conversation. What are you gonna say and why?
Wow, that's pretty deep. I'm gonna tell them all how much I love them, and that's all I need to tell them. I think I've loved my family and my spouse and prepared them well for life, and I just want to stress to them how much I love them all.
If you had to give your kids one piece of advice, knowing what you know now, other than telling them that you love them, what would you tell them?
To be patient, um, and you experience in life ups and downs and highs and lows, and when you're in the middle of the storm, it seems like it's going to last forever. And I do tell them this all the time. Give it a day or two, and it passes. And you look back on it, and you just can't believe how worked up you were over something. And I've gotten much better at that with that over time. And sometimes it seems like it's impossible. The storm's there forever, and it really does pass. And you look back on it, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah. Perspective is something that, yeah, if I look back on the things that were toughest in the moment that I lost sleep over, that I got like that gut feeling that I couldn't eat and all, and now I look back on it and I look back on it with a lot of empathy. Sometimes I look back and laugh at like, why did I care so deeply about that? Time is the ultimate equalizer to people that are taking shortcuts. Usually time is not their best friend, but then time is also someone's best friend if they're doing the right thing for the right reason. Usually you give it enough time, you understand, as Steve Jobs would say, how the dots connect.
100%.
David.
Stress and anxiety will kill you literally.
Yep.
And I've had my share of it. But if you take a step back, and perspective, like you said, is huge. Um, Nothing is worth killing yourself over.
Agreed. David, I really appreciate you taking time to be on the show, have this conversation. I need to do more of these. These are very life giving. I sometimes I've spent too much time talking to geeks and people that are like all in the weeds about how something, and it's fun to talk to someone who's talking about some of their ahas and some of their principles and what they would share with their family if this was their last day. And so I just want you to know that this was a life giving combo for me, and we're very grateful for you and excited for what the future holds. And just thank you for your willingness to share. I think hopefully it inspires other people to share their story, because someone might resonate with how you explain something, not for the way I explain it for the hundredth time. And so, thank you for
I'm
helping
honored
us.
to be invited, and hope I added some value to your channel.
Most people have no idea where to start or how to really evaluate whole life insurance. That's why we've built the Vault. It's all of our best life insurance resources and educational tools all in one place, all for free. We have calculators, handbooks, crash course, deep dive videos on numbers. If you want to learn more, click the link in the description or tag comment below to unlock the Vault.